How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Ches, Daf 8 of Masechta BavaKama. Friends, yo friends, yo friends, yo friends, friends. Well, if I was a betting fellow, I don't want to bet. Excuse me. This Daf, I say there's a good chance. I would say there's a bigger chance than there isn't a bigger chance, right? Like more than 50% chance. It's going to be an hour. It's a big one. It's a yeah. You're going to see. Remember, I told you yesterday that I came up with a new name. You're gonna hear my new word that I came up with. You're gonna hear my new word today. So stick with us, and you will learn my new invention. Okay, we got a little bit of work to do on Daf Zayin Amud Beis. Here we go. Okay, we're gonna start on Daf Zayin Amud Beis, 3 lines into the wide lines, all the way at the end. Ba mine Rav Shmuel bar Abba me Akronya me Reb Abba kshein shamin b'shelo ein shamin u'b'shel olam hein shamin. So Shmuel bar Abba me Akronya asked Reb Abba that when they're evaluating property, is it Edis, Beinonis, Ziboris, b'shelo? Well, meaning because it says Meitav Sadei Yushalim, right? So you have to pay with the Edis. So b'shelo ein shamin, to evaluate his property, or b'shel olam hein shamin, or is it sort of a universal definition of what's considered Edis, right? It could be that there's a universal definition of what is considered an Edis field, right? So if you have Reuven the tycoon, so he's got his best field that he has, which is mamish, the best of the best. But he's also got some pretty darn good fields also that would generally be considered pretty darn good, but they aren't his best of the best because he's Reuven the tycoon. So now, if we say it's based on his best field, so he's got to give his best field, which is his best field. But if there's some kind of universal definition of what an Edis field is, well then, maybe he can give his Ziboris fields, which would still nonetheless be considered on the universal definition of an Edis field, would still be considered an Edis field. So that's what we're trying to figure out. So B'shelo ein shamin, are they based on his fields? B'shel olam ein shamin, or is there some kind of universal definition of an Edis field? Aliba de Yishmael lo tibaylach. So now, there's no need to ask according to Rabbi Yishmael, the Omer b'denizak shaminun, that he says b'denizak shaminun, which means that Reuven needs to pay Shimon based on Shimon's best field, even if it's not Reuven's best field. So we see that in that case, it's not going to be Reuven's best field, right? It could be based on, it could end up being Reuven Ziboris even. Kiti Boilach, where the Kasha is a Libid Rabbi Akiva. So going to Rabbi Akiva, the Amr b'de Mazik Shaminu. The Rabbi Akiva says that after all, we evaluate based on the Mazik. In this case, Reuven the Tycoon Mazik, Reuven the Mazik Tycoon. Maybe his first name is Reuven, his last name is Tycoon, his middle name, his nickname is the Mazik. Reuven the Mazik Tycoon. Reuven the Mazik Tycoon. So the Rabbi Akiva the Amr b'de Mazik Shamina, that we say that we give the Edis of Reuven the Tycoon. So what do we say? Do we say Meitav Sadei Amar Rachmana Lemute din Nizak? That maybe when we're saying Meitav Sadei, it has to be the best of his fields. It's just, the best of his fields as opposed to the best of Shimon's fields. But within his fields, could be his Edis, as long as it's sort of a universally qualified Edis, that should be enough. Or maybe it's his field also to the exclusion of a universally defined Edis field, i.e., it would have to be his absolute best field. So Amar le Rachmane Amar Meitav Sadeu Bat Amar Bishal Olam Hein Shamin, to which Rabba retorts that look, the Torah says Meitav Sadeu, he's got to give his best stuff. Are you really suggesting that it could be some kind of universal definition and that's enough? and he can give a Ziboris because universally it would be recognized as Idis, Nisht. It has to be his best field. Eisvei, but I guess Reb Shmuel bar Abba Me'akronia asks Reb Abba, people, keep it down, will you? I'm recording Babylon Talmud. Eisvei, Ein lo ella Idis. Ooh, so here we go. Ooh, here we go. 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 Okay. Okay. You have a guy named Reuven. Reuven has 3 fields: an Idis field, a Beinonis field, and a Ziboris field. Now, there's 3 people that Reuven owes money to. He got divorced and he needs to pay ksuba to his ex-wife. So that is paid from Ziboris. And he also borrowed $1,000. So he's got a Balchov, a creditor. That is paid from the Beinonis. And also his ox did some damage and now he's got to pay the Nizak, and that is paid from the Idis. There are people making noise outside, and this is not a good time for them to be making noise because I need my brain, functioning as good as my brain can be functioning. Okay, so where are we? Oh no, this is no good. This is really no good. This is really no good. These people are having a jolly old time at my expense. Uh-oh. Alright, so Eisvei, Ein lo ella Idis. So if Reuven only has Idis, and he's got these 3 people who he owes money to, so then Kulam Govim Idis, well then, obviously, they're all going to collect from his Idis. There's no other option. Beinonis, Kulam Govim Beinonis. If all he has is Beinonis, then obviously they're all going to collect from Beinonis. Ziboris, Kulam Govin Ziboris. And if all he has is Ziboris, then all of them are going to collect Ziboris. Hoylo Idis u Beinonis. Okay, what if he has Idis and Beinonis? Well then, of course, the Nizak is going to collect from the Idis. The Balchov is going to collect from the Beinonis. Now the Isha, the Ksubas Isha, there's no Ziboris to collect from, so that will also be from the Beinonis, right? So where am I? Oh no, I'm sorry. Where am I? Fine. Haylo Idis to Beinonis Viziboris. If he has all 3 fields, well then Nizakin be'idis, Uvalchov be'Beinonis, Uchsubas Isha be'Ziboris. Right. So in that case, if he has 3 fields, so then everybody collects from the field that they are meant to collect from. And Chevra, let me just emphasize what I just said, that everyone collects from the field that they're meant to collect from, because this concept is going to come up throughout the daf, and if we just kind of all agree that everybody, when I say everybody collects from the field that they're meant to collect from, that means that the Nizak is going to collect from Idis, the Balchov is going to collect from Beinonis, and the Ksubas Isha is going to be from the Ziboris. Okay, that way I don't need to every time kind of say who's collecting what. When I say that everybody collects from the field that they're meant to collect from, that is what that means. Nizakin from Idis, Balchov from Beinonis, and Ksubas Isha from Ziboris. Okay, so in that case, when he has all 3, Idis, Beinonis, Ziboris, so then everybody collects from the field that they're meant to collect from. Fine. Okay. Fine. Idis u Beinonis, if all he has is Idis and Beinonis, as I mistakenly jumped the gun a minute ago and said, so the Nizakin will be from Idis, the Balchov, of course, will be from Beinonis, and the Ksubas Isha, there is no Ziboris, so that will also be from Beinonis. So Nizakin be'idis, Balchov, Ksubas Isha be'Beinonis. Beinonis v'Ziboris, if all he has is Beinonis and Ziboris, so then Ksubas Isha, of course, is going to be from Ziboris. Balchov is going to be from Beinonis, and Nizakin, since there's no Idis, that will also be from Beinonis, right? So Nizakin u'Valchov be'Beinonis u'Ksubas Isha be'Ziboris. Idis v'Ziboris. Now this one's interesting. If all he has is Idis and Ziboris, so of course the Idis is going, of course the Nizakin is going to be from the Idis. Of course the Ksubas Isha is going to be from the Ziboris. The Baal Chov normally would collect from Beinonis, but there is no Beinonis, so we don't go up to Edis. Rather, the Baal Chov would collect from the Ziboris, and we're going to see later on the daf that the whole reason why a Baal Chov collects from Beinonis is actually, really technically, the Baal Chov can just collect from Ziboris, right, from the lowest lands. The thing is, who's going to want to lend money if they can only, Shimon lends Reuven $1,000, Reuven doesn't give him back cash, now he's taking property, he can only take from the worst property. Chaval, it's lo na'im for Shimon. He's not going to want to lend any money because, if he doesn't get paid back, he's stuck with garbage land. So therefore, we bump him up and say, you know what, Shimon, if it comes down to it that he collects land, Beinonis, he'll get regular land. So that's just kind of to make sure so that he's not discouraged from lending. But technically speaking, if there is no, so now in our case, though, all there is Edis and Ziboris, there's no Beinonis. So we say, look, Meikar Adin, really, the Ziboris is what he's entitled to. So in this case, he would collect from Ziboris. 1 second. Is my neighbor hopefully yelling at the people? 1 second. I don't know. Hopefully she yelled at them to go away. That would be, while not very nice, it would be convenient for me. But I don't think so because they're still making noise. Oh gosh, it's so annoying. Oh, so annoying. Edis v'ziboris. So again, so if there's Edis and there's Ziboris, so Nizakin be Edis, so the Nizakin of course will collect from Edis, and then Ubal Chov Uchzubas Isha Biziboris. Now, here's the kasha. Remember, we were asking the question of is Nizakin, when we're talking about the Edis by Nizakin, is that talking about the best of Reuven the Tycoon's fields, or is it a sort of global definition? Or is it a global definition? So now here's the thing. Katani Mia Mitzia Beinonis visible. 1 second. Right, exactly. So again, Katani Mia, we taught Mitzia, it's a Katani Mia Mitzia, so we mentioned sort of one of the previous cases. Beinonis Viziboris, that if all there is Beinonis and Ziboris, so we said in that case, Nizakin uvalchov bebeinonis, that the Nizakin and the Balchov are by the Beinonis. Again, when we said that there's only Beinonis and Ziboris, so of course the Ksubas Isha is going to be from the Ziboris, and the Nizakin and the Balchov are going to collect from the Beinonis. Now here's the thing, right? So again, Katanimia Mitzia, Beinonis v'Ziboris, Nizakin uvalchov bebeinonis, so both the Nizakin and the Balchov collect from Beinonis, Uchsubas Isha beziboris, and the Ksuba is going to be from the Boris. But now here's the kasha. V'yomrit b'shelo ein shaman. If it's like what Rabbi Abba said, that b'shelo ein shaman, that they evaluate that Edis is Reuven the Tycoon's best field, that it's his best field becomes the Edis in the context of Nizakin. Well then, if the only two fields that he has in this case are Beinonis and Ziboris, so then the Beinonis should become the Edis, right? Because we're talking about it's his best field. His best field is the Beinonis field. So that becomes the Edis. And we're saying that the Nizakin is collected from the Edis. And we had previously said that when all there is Edis and Ziboris, so the Balchov would not collect from the Edis, he would collect from the Ziboris. So again, if we're saying that Edis in the context of Nizakin is the Edis of the Mazik, well then in this case, the Beinonis is the best one that he has, so that becomes the Edis, which means that essentially what he has is Edis and Ziboris, and we said that in the case of Edis and Ziboris, the Balchov would collect from Ziboris. So why are we saying that the Balchov is collecting from Beinonis? So this must be that it is not relative to his best field, because in that case, the Balchov would not collect from Beinonis, he would collect from Ziboris. Got it? Capish? I really hope the people outside go away really, really soon. So again, that if we say that we evaluate based on the Mazik's best land, well then te'aseh Beinonis shelo ki'idis, well then if all there is Beinonis and Ziboris, then the Beinonis becomes Edis, relatively speaking. which means that all he has is Edis now and Ziboris, v'yidche Balchov Eitzel Ziboris. And like we said in the case of Edis and Ziboris, the Balchov should collect from the Ziboris, not from the Beinonis. And for the Gemara, Achav Ma'eskinon Kigon, Shaisalo Edis Umachra. So the Gemara says, well, this case is talking about, I mean, you can say that it is based on his best property, but in this particular case, it's talking about where at the time that Reuven borrowed the money, he had 3 fields. He had Edis, and he had Beinonis, and he had Ziboris. At the time that of the loan, there were all 3, which means that when let's say Shimon lent him money, so when Shimon lent Reuven the money, there was a Beinoni field, and the loan got attached at that time to the Beinoni field. And that is why, even though then he subsequently sold the Edis field, and all that he had left was Beinoni and Ziboris, still the Balchov will be paid back from the Beinonis, since that's what his loan was attached to at the time of the loan. So again, Achav Ma'eskinon Kagon, Shahaislu Edis Umachra, that he had Edis at the time of the loan got attached to the Beinonis, because there was Edis, Beinonis, and Ziboris, and then even though he subsequently sold the Edis, still, when it comes time to collect, the Balchov is going to collect from the Beinonis, since that is what the loan was attached to. And Rav Chisda similarly says that yes, it's talking about a situation where there was Edis, but it was sold, and that is why the loan got attached to the Beinonis at the time of the loan, when there was still Edis. And this Taka makes sense. How come it makes sense? Because we have another brisa which says Beinonis v'Ziboris, that when there is Beinonis and Ziboris, Nizakin b'Beinonis, so the Nizakin will be collected from the Beinonis, and Balchov v'Chsubas Isha b'Ziboris. And in this case, in this price, we're saying that actually the Balchov is not going to be collected from the Beinonis, it's going to be collected from the Ziboris, along with the Ksubas Isha. Kashina Adade. Those 2 brises contradict each other. On the one hand, we're saying that when there's Beinonis and Ziboris, the Nizakin and the Balchov collect from Beinonis, and the Ksubas Isha is from Ziboris. But we have another brise that says, no, only the Nizakin are collected from Beinonis, but the Balchov, along with the Ksubas Isha, are collected from the Ziboris. So we see that, so we want to say, Elalav Shmamina. How do you answer this? And therefore it makes sense to say that in the first brisa, when we say that it's the Balchov is collected from the Beinonis, it's because at the time of the loan there was still Edis, and the loan became attached to the Beinonis. And when we say that the Balchov collects from the Ziboris, it's because at the time of the loan there was only Beinonis and Ziboris, which means and the Beinonis therefore would be considered, relatively speaking, the Edis, and therefore the Balchov cannot collect from that, rather he collects from the Ziboris. Alternatively, you can answer the contradiction, the conflicting brises, in the following way, that actually it's not a relative Edis, right? Edis is not the Mazik's best field, it's not a relative thing, it's a universal thing. That there's a universal definition of Edis, of Beinonis, of Ziboris. We're not talking about at the time of the loan there was Edis and then it got sold. No, at the time of the loan there was only Beinonis and Ziboris. If that's the case, then how come the Balchov collects from Beinonis? Velokasha hadeshavya Beinonis shelo ki Edis de alma v'chan delo shavya Beinonis shelo ki Edis de alma. So again. Hadeshavya Beinonis Shalok to Edis. So we're talking about that it's a global definition. And so Hadeshavya Beinonis Shalok to Edis Alma. So if his Beinonis is basically universally would be treated as Edis, so if it would be treated universally as Edis, so then it's not Beinonis, which means that he would collect from the Ziboris. So again, exactly. That his Beinonis is not on the level of Edis, and therefore, if it's not Edis, if it's Beinonis, so then he collects from Beinonis. Alternatively, alternatively, you could say in both prices the Beinonis would universally be considered Beinonis. Here the machlokas is Ma'asaver b'shelo hein shamin, Ma'asaver b'shel olam hein shamin. So we can say that again. In both prices, it's talking about where the Beinonis would universally be considered Beinonis, but the machlokas between the two prices is b'shelo hein shamin. If we say b'shelo hein shamin, well, if it's based on his stuff, well then the Beinonis is his best thing, so it would be considered Edis. That's why we collect the Balchov from the Ziboris. Then the other Brisa says that no, we collect, we evaluate based on universal definitions, and since universally would be a Beinonis, therefore the Balchov collects from Beinonis. Ravina Amar, and says Ravina bideula plige. Ravina says that actually the discrepancy between the two brises is actually based on the statement of Ula. Let's go weiter for a second. As I referenced earlier to Amar Ula, that Ula says Dvar Torah mida oraisa balchov beziborus. Mida oraisa, a balchov, a creditor, somebody who's owed money from a loan. Mida oraisa, he collects from ziborus. Shenemar, suppose there's bachutz tamo, that he's got to wait outside. V'a'ish asher ata noshebo, and the person who owes you money, Yotze Elecha, so Avot Achutza will take out the collateral outside to you, and if he's taking it out to you and you got to wait outside, so obviously he's going to want to bring out to the creditor the cheapest thing he could find, right? The cheapest thing he can get away with. So therefore, so we see that a creditor me'ikar adin can only collect from ziboris. So how come they said that a balchov can collect from Beinonis, just so that as not to lock the doors in front of borrowers, right? Meaning, if we treat the lenders very poorly and say that, look, if the borrower doesn't pay you back, you could take land, but only the worst possible land, so then lenders aren't really going to want to lend, right? Of course, in Jewish law, you can't charge interest, so there really is no, right? You're doing a favor. So we don't want, so we want to be sensitive and not kind of annoy or disadvantage the lenders. And therefore, we say, look, Me'ikar Adin, the lender is entitled only to Ziboris, but we bump it up to Beinonis just so that, it'll be kind of more, a more expected situation. Okay, that if you don't get paid back in cash, at least you can get regular property. So the first brisa, which says that the Balchov gets paid back from the Beinonis, he holds of Ula that Balchov gets paid back with Beinonis. Whereas the second brisa, which says that the Balchov collects from the Beinonis, from the Edis, that would be if you don't hold like Ula, and instead you say, look, he's entitled to Ziboris, and that is what he can collect, not the Beinonis. So Chaver, now I will share with you the word that I invented. The word that I invented is two words. Bave kivamis. Bave kivamis. Bave kivamis. Of course we learned Masechta Yevamis, and that's Yevamis. We learned Masechta Kiddushin, and we learned the parak Asar Yuchsin, not my cup of tea, as you know. We called it Kivamis, because it was Kiddushin, but also it ended up becoming Yevamis. We called it Kivamis. This is an Anderazach. This is something else. Bave Kivamis. This is Bave Kivamis. Why is it Bave Kivamis? It's not Yevamis. We're not going to talk about Ruvain Shimon. Ruvain's married to Sarah. Ruvain died. It's not Yevamis. It's not Yevamis. But it's like a BavaKama version of Yevamis in that there is Ruvain, there is Shimon, there is Levi, there is Yehuda. But instead of Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and who's married to who, there is who's owed what money. Is it Nizakin? Is it Balchov? Is it Ksubas Isha? Is it collected from the Edis? Is it collected from the Beinonis? Is it collected from the Ziboris? Is it collected from Ruvain? Shimon, who's got which field? It's be'etzem kind of a similar thing. It runs around in your head. It doesn't drive me as crazy as Yevamis, I'll tell you. But who's got what? Bave Kivamis. It's not Yevamis, it's Bave Kivamis. So now here we go. We're going to learn a sugya of Bave Kivamis. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught Machron le'echod. We've learned some of these sugyas before, I think. but BavaKama. Tanu Rabbanan, Machron le'echad. So we're going to work with, I think, just Reuven, Shimon, Levi, and Yehuda, and I think we'll talk about a Balchov, a Nizak, a Ksubas Isha. So you have Reuven, and Reuven has 3 fields. Reuven has got 3 fields. He's got an Edis field, a Beinonis field, a Ziboris field. Givaldig. Now, of course, just a reminder, Edis is the best, Beinonis is the middle, Ziboris is the worst. I mean, we've been already talking about these fields, for the past 25 minutes or so, but I'll go upon him. Okay, it's a good reminder whenever. Tanaran Machron, so Reuven sells all 3 fields le'echad, to Shimon. Now, I'll tell you, when I was learning the daf, I was working with Levi, Yehuda, and Yisachar, but ultimately we didn't need Shimon, so I took out Shimon, so hopefully I won't make any mistakes. We're just going to talk about Reuven, Shimon, Levi, and Yehuda. No Yisachar. So hopefully I won't make any mistakes. So Reuven sells all of his fields, Edis, Beinonis, Ziboris, to Shimon. Oh, the Shalosh Bnei Adam. Or he sells his fields to 3 people, ke'echad, but as one. Kula nichnasu tachas habaylim, so they take the place of Reuven. What does it mean they take the place of Reuven? That if you have a Nizak, if you have a Balchov, if you have a Ksubas Isha, and as I said earlier, I'm not going to say who gets what, or maybe I'll say who gets what once, but as I said, I'll say it now. But I won't say it, hopefully I won't say it again because it's going to be too crazy. But everyone's entitled to get, their respective fields, and what that means is the Nizak gets Edis, the Balchov gets Beinonis, and the Ksubas Isha gets Ziboris, okay? So if Reuven, who had Edis, Beinonis, and Ziboris, sells all 3 fields to Shimon, or he sells his 3 fields, the Edis to Shimon, the Beinonis to Levi, and the Edis and the Ziboris to Yehuda, so then if he sells it to them all at once, so still everyone can collect their respective fields. I don't remember exactly what I said, the fields that they're entitled to, whatever their respective fields, and I'm going to assume that you remember what that means now. So, okay, fine. But if he sells the Edis to Shimon on Sunday and the Beinonis to Levi on Monday and the Ziboris to Yehuda on Tuesday, Kulon Govin Mina Achrin, so everyone, the Nizak, the Balchov, the Isha, everyone collects from Yehuda, collects from the Ziboris, and that is because of the concept that we've seen before in other places, that Ein Nifraim Min Nechasim Mishubadim B'makom Sheyesh Nechasim B'nei Chorin. That, if a Balchov comes to Reuven and says, look, you owe me money. Reuven says, I don't have money. So Shimon says, okay, give me land. And he says, well, I had Beinonis, but I sold it. All I have now is Ziboris. Shimon cannot go to the person who bought the Beinonis and said, I want to collect the land. No, if Reuven has Ziboris available, Shimon collects from what's available. You don't collect from land that's been sold if there is land available, even if it's inferior land. So here too, if Reuven had on Sunday sold the Edis to Shimon, on Monday sold the Beinonis to Levi, which means at that time all that was left over was the Ziboris, the worst field. So at that point, all 3 claimants, I guess, right, the Nizak, the Balchov, the Ksubas Isha, all of them, if they want to collect, they would collect from what's left over, which is the Edis, which is the Ziboris. And then on Tuesday, when Reuven sells the Ziboris to Yehuda, so Yehuda basically collected or purchased the Ziboris along with the claims of the Nizak, the Balchov, and the Isha. So therefore, all 3 would collect from Yehuda. Ein lo, if the Ziboris is just simply not worth enough to cover all of the claims, so then Gova Mishalafanov, so then they go to Levi and continue collecting from Levi, Ein lo, and if there's not sufficient value in Levi's Beinonis field to settle all the claims. Gove Mishalifnei Panav, so then they would go to Shimon in order to collect whatever is left over from in the field that Shimon purchased. Fine. Now, Machron le'echod heichidami. Now, when the Brisa says that if Ruvain sold all three fields to Shimon, to one person, what are we talking about? Ilema bevasa achas. If we're talking about where he's in one document, he said to Shimon, "I'm selling you all of my fields, all three of my fields. Here they are." He writes a document, gives it to Shimon. Shimon now owns all three fields, and we're saying that all the claimants collect from their respective fields. So hashta lishlosha. But one second, we said that if he sells it to three people, to Shimon, Levi, and Yehuda, ke'echad, which means all on the same day, but of course different shtaris, but all on the same day, that we could theoretically say, look, one of them had to come before the others, and therefore, Shimon can say, leave me alone, go to the others, because when I bought it, there were still others available. And still we say that everyone is able to claim everyone collects from their respective fields. So we still say that everyone can collect from their respective fields. So certainly when Reuven sells all three fields to one person, to Shimon, all at once, certainly everyone can collect from their respective fields. So Ela Pshita Baze Acharze. So rather it must be that it's talking about where Reuven sold all three fields to Shimon, but on different days. On Sunday he sold the Edis to Shimon, on Monday he sold the Beinonis to Shimon, and on Tuesday he sold the Ziboris to Shimon. All to Shimon on 3 different days. But then Frekti Gemara, Umayshna Shlosha. Now why is that different from when he sells the Edis to Shimon on Sunday, the Beinonis to Levi on Monday, and the Ziboris to Yehuda on Tuesday? We said that in that case, everyone collects from Yehuda, from the Ziboris. T'chol chad v'chad, omar lei, heinachti l'chol makom, ligabus mimenu. That everyone collects from Yehuda because Shimon and Levi are both going to say, leave me alone. When I purchased my field, there was still another field available, and of course, go to Yehuda, because when Yehuda purchased the Ziboris, he purchased it along with all of your claims. So Hainami, shouldn't that be the same case here as well? Shouldn't Shimon, who purchased all three fields but on different days, be able to say to all the claimants that, hey, I'm paying you from the Ziboris, since when I purchased the Edis, there was still other fields available. When I purchased the Beinonis, there was still the Ziboris available. And therefore, at that time that I purchased the Ziboris, all of your claims, right, at the time that I purchased the Ziboris, i.e., when the only field remaining to Reuven was the Ziboris, at that time, all of your claims could have only been made against the Ziboris because I'd already purchased the Edis and the Beinonis, which means that when I purchased then the Ziboris, along with your claims, so you can only claim from the Ziboris. So therefore, why are we saying that when Shimon purchases all three fields but on 3 different days, they are all able to collect from their respective fields? Shouldn't they all only be able to collect from the Ziboris, since Shimon can say, look, when I purchased the Ziboris, your claim, right, at the time that I purchased the Ziboris, I purchased it along with all your claims because it was the last field to be purchased. So Achav Mayaskinon, here we're talking about Kigon, Shelokach Idis Ba'achrona. Well, here it's talking about where it's actually fakert. Shimon on Sunday purchased the Ziboris, on Monday purchased the Beinonis, and on Tuesday purchased the Edis. So the Edis was the last one to be purchased. And Rav Sheshes also says, talking about where the Edis was the last one to be purchased. But now you might be thinking, But then still, why is everybody collecting from their respective fields? Everyone should be able to now score big time and be able to collect from the Edis, right? Because when Ruvain purchased the Ziboris and the Benonis, the Edis, when Shimon purchased the Ziboris and the Benonis, the Edis was still belonged to Ruvain, which means that at that time everyone would have come to collect from Ruvain, from the only field that he had left, which is the Edis. When Ruvain then sold the Edis to Shimon, he sold it along with all of everybody's claims, so everyone should be able to come and claim from Shimon from the Edis. So why are we saying that everyone can only claim their respective fields? So listen to what the Gemara answers, very interesting answer. Mishum de Omar Lehu, because Shimon will say to the people, listen, take it or leave it. I recommend taking it. Ish shaskisu v'shaklisu kedinaichu shaklisu. Look, I'm offering that everyone takes their respective field. The ex-wife, I'm willing to give you Ziboris. I know that you want Edis. I'm willing to give you Ziboris. And the Balchov, I know you also want Edis, but I'm giving you Beinonis. The Nizak, of course, he can collect Edis because that's what he's entitled to. And people, if you want to accept it, great. But Ve'ilo, if you're unwilling to accept it and you insist that you are entitled to the Edis, Ma'adarnish shtarid ziboris limari v'shaklisu kulchum ziboris. I am going to return the Ziboris back to Ruvain, which means that Ruvain will own the Ziboris, and now you will be unable to claim anything from me because ein nifraim minechasim mishubadim b'makom sheish nechasim b'nichorin. Then you'll have to all be forced to go to Ruvain, and the only field that he'll have left is the Ziboris that I'm going to give back to him, and you'll all collect from Ziboris. So either accept what I'm offering, and the Balchov will be able to collect from Benonis, and the Nizak will be able to collect from Edis. If you're unwilling to accept these terms, I'm giving back the Ziboris, and you're all getting Ziboris. So therefore he has leverage, and that is why everyone collects their respective fields, because either take it or leave it. But if that's the case, so let him go arasof. Let Shimon say to the Nizak, take it or leave it. And he'll say to the Nizak, you know what? Nizak, I know you're entitled to Edis, but guess what? I'm not giving you Edis. I'm giving you Benonis. And guess what? If you don't like it, I'll give back the Ziboris, and you'll have to get Ziboris. So why is, it's his business. I know, maybe Shimon's not such a nice guy. He's a businessman. Cutthroat. So he says to Shimon, so Shimon says to the Nizak, why should Shimon have to give the Nizak Edis? Let him tell him, look, I'm willing to give you Benonis, take it, or otherwise you're going to get Edis. Or otherwise you're going to get Ziboris. So Benizak nami name. So why doesn't Shimon say this? So Elo, Ochob Mayaskinon Biyasme, Tilav Bnei, Peron Ninu, Vishibuda Delay, Ole Dide, Ramyo. Hilkoch, Lekaleme Mahachi. Rather, it's talking about where Shimon is permanently in Wellwood until Trias HaMesim. Reuven is permanently in Wellwood until Trias HaMesim. Now, if that's the case, so the claimants, the Isha, the Balchov, the Nizak, so, Reuven had sold all of his properties to Shimon. The Edis, the Benonis, the Ziboris, everything was sold to Shimon. Reuven did not bequeath any fields to his heirs. Now, the heirs are not responsible to pay Reuven's creditors with metaltalin. They are not responsible to pay with metaltalin. The heirs are not responsible to pay with metaltalin, only with karka, but they don't have any karka. It was all sold away, sold to Shimon. So these claimants cannot make any claims against Reuven's estate. The claimants are coming to Shimon. Now, even if Shimon would say, well, I'm just going to sell back the Ziboris to the heirs, that wouldn't help, because that's just considered property that the heirs bought after their father died, and the claimants cannot, the creditors cannot collect from it. So basically, the only address that they can come to is Shimon. So Shimon does not have the option to just sell back the Ziboris, and then everyone's going to have to get paid from Ziboris. So he doesn't have that leverage anymore. So again, here what are we talking about? Biyasme, where Ruvain is permanently in Wellwood until Tchias HaMesim, and there's the heirs, there's the kids, the orphans, that they're not responsible to pay with metaltalin for their father's debts, and there is no property because it was all sold to Shimon. Vishibuda dile ole dide ramya, and therefore Shimon is going to have to settle these creditors, take care of these creditors, and he can't sell anything back. So therefore, look, he purchased the Idis, Benonis, and Ziboris from Ruvain, and now and he can't, so he can't sell anything back. You can't sell the Ziboris back to the Yisomim. It doesn't work. So if that's the case, so then, how do we explain how come Shimon is paying back the creditors their respective fields? Shouldn't you have to pay them back with all Edis, since that was the last one that he purchased? So but rather is because Shimon says to the creditors the following. What's the whole reason behind Ein Nifraim Minichasim B'nei Mishubadim B'makom Sheyesh Nichasim B'nei Chorin? How come we say that a creditor cannot get paid from land property that was sold if there's property that has not yet been sold? It's in order to protect the buyers, right? Just in a made-up case, Shimon lends Reuven $1,000, and then Reuven sells his Benonis field to Levi, to somebody else. When Shimon comes to collect, he has to collect from whatever fields Reuven still has, even if it's Ziboris, in order to protect Shimon, Levi, who purchased the field. Right? It's to protect the person who purchased it, that the creditor is not going to come in and show up at his door and take away his field. Look, if Reuven still has fields to collect from that and leave the buyer alone. Shimon says, look, I'm the buyer. I'm the buyer here. This whole takana was in order to protect me. And it is not beneficial to me. I'm not interested in you all taking my best land. So this whole thing that you're based on, which is is in order to protect my interests. In this case, it doesn't actually protect me. It works out worse for me if you all get paid back from the Edis. I actually much prefer if everyone gets paid back from their respective properties. The Isha from the Ziboris, the Balcho from the Benonis, and the Nizak from the Edis. So again, the Amrlu, Mishum the Amrlu, he says to them, Taimamai Amr Rabbanon, Ein Nifraim Min Chasim Shubadim B'makom Sheish B'nei Chorim. Why do the Chachamim say, don't collect from purchased property when there is available property to the debtor, to the person who owes money? Takanta Didi, Mishum Takanta Didi. In order to protect me, the purchaser, the buyer. Onaba Takanta Lo Nichali. And in this case, I don't want that. It doesn't help me if you're all going to come collect from my best lands. Kedrav, it's like Rava says, as we've seen in Masechet Ksubis, I think. Why not? Rava says, that anybody says, look, I can't deal with this Takonas Chacham like this. Shomila, we listen to them, Mike Gonzo, what is like this? Kedrav Huna, it's like Rav Huna. The Amr Rav Huna says, Rav Huna, Yechola Isha Shetomer Levaila. A woman can say to her husband, Eini Nizonis, Ve'eniosa. Look, don't pay for my food, and I'm also not giving you my revenues, right? I'm not giving you the money that I make, right? Normally, the halacha is that a husband is responsible to pay for his wife's food, but in return, whatever money she makes, he gets. It's a trade-off. She could say, look, I'm making enough money that I want to keep my own money, and don't pay for my food. So she could say, look, the whole point is to benefit me. It doesn't benefit me. I'd rather keep my own stuff. So here also, Shimon could say, look, it doesn't benefit me for all you people to come and collect my Edis. I'd rather that everyone just collect what they deserve. Me'ikar adin. So now says the Gemara, Pshita, Macher lokeach Beinonis v'ziboris v'shir Edis lifanov leisukulu v'ligbu me'edis to achrona hiu Beinonis v'ziboris lesnu gabe dematzi lemeimalu gabu mi Beinonis v'ziboris lo nichali b'takanta derabanon. You guys got that? Should I go weiter? Probably not. So now, Shimon purchased all three fields from Reuven. Shimon purchased all 3 fields from Reuven. Shimon purchased all 3 fields from Reuven. Now, we said, look, the Takanas Chachamim is that everybody can come and collect from the Edis, since that's the one that he purchased last. Now, he had said, but look, I purchased all 3 fields. I also purchased the Ziboris and the Beinonis. And it's not in my interest that you all collect from the Edis, because that's the best one. I'd prefer that the Isha collect from the Ziboris, the Balchov collect from the Beinonis, and only the Nizak collect from the Edis. But what happens if Shimon sells the Ziboris and the Beinonis to Levi? So now he no longer has the Beinonis and the Ziboris. He can no longer say, look, I'd rather you take the Beinonis and the Ziboris, because he doesn't own the Beinonis and the Ziboris. He sold it to Levi. So therefore, in that case, they all come and say, look, you purchased the Edis last. So the Takanas Chacham would dictate that we can all claim from the Edis. You can't say that, right, that take from your respective fields, because you don't own anymore the Beinonis and the Ziboris. So therefore, everyone would be able to collect from the Edis. So again, so let's read that inside. Pshita, it's obvious that Mochar Lokeach Beinonis v'Ziboris, that if Shimon then sold the Beinonis and the Ziboris to Levi, V'shir Edis Lifanov, and all he has left is the Edis, which was the last one that he purchased, and technically speaking, Mitakanis Rabbanon, all the claims are on the Edis. Leisu Kulu, all 3 of the creditors can come V'ligbu me'edis and collect from the Edis that he, which is the only field that he still has, the Achroni, because it's the one that he purchased the last, and Mishum Takanos Chacham, he purchased it along with all of their claims. Uveinonis v'Ziboris lesnu gabe, and he no longer owns the Beinonis and the Ziboris, the Matzi Lemeimar, which would have allowed him to say Lihu to them, Gabumi Beinonis, collect from the Beinonis v'Ziboris, de lo nichli b'takanta d'Rabbanan, because I'm not because the Takanas d'Rabbanan doesn't interest me. But he can no longer make that claim because he doesn't own the Beinonis and the Ziboris to tell him collect from them. So therefore, they would all collect from the Edis. Aval mocher Edis v'shir Beinonis v'Ziboris mai. But what if he sold the Edis to Levi, but kept the Ziboris and the Beinonis? Can Shimon say, look, go to Levi, he purchased the Edis, that is the one that all your claims are on. So Abai Lemeimer Abai thought to say, also Kulu Gavumi Edis. So Abai thought to say, punkt that, let them all go to Levi and collect from the Edis, because Shimon sold Levi the land that has all of the claims. Rava says, Ma mocher rishon l'sheni. What does Shimon sell to Levi? Kol zchus shetava liyado. Shimon is selling to Levi whatever status he had. He's then transferring to Levi with the sale. And the status that he had was that if they would come to make the claims, he would say, look, everybody collect from your respective fields. So then, when Levi purchases the Edis from Shimon, he's basically purchasing that same status with the assumption that only the Nizak would be able to collect from the Edis, and that the Isha would collect from the Ziboris, and the Balchov would collect the Beinonis, which is basically what would have happened at the time of the sale when Shimon owned all 3. So again, ma mocher rishon l'sheni. What does Shimon sell to Levi? Kol zchus shetavu liyado. Any zchus that he had, any rights that he had, any claims that he would have been able to make, which in this case is everybody collect from your respective fields. So v'cheven ilu asu gabi lokech rishon. And since if they would have come to Shimon when he owned all 3 fields, masi agbiluhu mi Beinonis v'Ziboris. Right. So when they would come to Shimon to make their claims, he would say, look, everybody collect from your respective fields. The Afalpian, even though the Chizavni Beinonis, that when Shimon purchased the Beinonis, Viziboris, and the Ziboris, Akati Idis b'nei Chorin Avoy, the Idis was still in Ruvain's possession, and Takanos Chachamim, they should all be able to collect from the Idis, but still, right, I'm sorry, and I'm going to keep going. Ve'ein nefar min chasm shubadim, kozman diika b'nei Chorin. And, based on the principle of you don't get paid back from sold property when there's available property. So technically speaking, they should all be able to make the claim against Shimon that we want to collect from Edis, but nonetheless, Matzi Amrle could tell them, Lo nichali by takana, that it doesn't benefit me if you all collect from my Edis. I want you to collect from your respective fields. So Lekeach Sheni Nami. So also, when Levi purchases the Edis from Shimon, Matzi Amrle says, Gabi Benonis Viziboris, that he could say to the Balchov, collect from the Benonis, and to the Isha to collect from the Ziboris, the Chizavin Lokeach Sheni, because when Levi purchased from Shimon, Adaita the Chozchusa, Davle Levishon Begava Zavin, Levi purchased from Shimon, assuming, whatever status that Levi purchased with whatever status Shimon had, and just like Shimon would be able to say, people, collect from your respective fields, Levi can also say that, that is what I took upon myself, is whatever Shimon would have had, is what I took upon myself with the purchase. When I purchased the Ziboris, I purchased it, when I purchased the Edis, I purchased it assuming that only the Nizak would be able to collect from it, but the Balchov and the Isha should go and collect from what they are entitled to respectively. My Rave says, Rave, Ruvain, Shemocha kol sadosov l'Shimon. So if Ruvain sold all three of his fields to Shimon, right? Edis, Benonis, Ziboris. V'holach Shimon u'machar sada achas l'Levi, and Shimon then sells the Benonis to Levi. As we're going to see in a second, we're talking about the Benonis. He then sells the Benonis to Levi. Uva Balchov de Ruvain. Now a Balchov who's owed money, right? Somebody had lent $1,000 to Ruvain, so he now comes. Rotzemizagov, he can collect from either one, from Shimon or from Levi, right? He can collect from Shimon because he says, look, Shimon, you had purchased all of the property from Ruvain, which means that you had essentially accepted the responsibility to pay, to pay back, to pay with, that I can collect from your fields. At the same time, you can also go to Levi because he says, look, Levi, you have the Benonis field and I'm entitled to collect from Benonis. So you can go to either Shimon or to Levi and collect. V'lo amar and Ella Duzavin Benonis. Now, as I mentioned a minute ago, that of course is only assuming that Shimon sold the Benonis to Levi, but Avozavin Edis v'Ziboris. But if Levi had purchased the Edis and the Ziboris but kept the Benonis by Shimon, well then he can't go to Levi, the Amar Levi, because Levi will say, look, there's a reason why I conspicuously only purchased the Ziboris and the Edis, but I left the Benonis by Shimon. That's punct why I specifically bought the Edis and the Ziboris. Specifically, I purchased the properties that you can't touch, Mr. Balchov. And therefore go to Shimon and collect the Benonis from him. And even if Levi did purchase the Benonis, Namilo Amar and Ella, Diloshai Benonis, that's also so long as there's no longer any Benonis by Shimon. Right? Because he can't say, I left anything by Shimon. Meaning, even if Levi purchases Benonis, the Balchov can only collect from Levi if he purchased all the Benonis. But if he left more Benonis by Shimon, Levi could say, look, right. But if Levi left Benonis fields still by Shimon, lo gabi mine, the Balchov cannot collect from Levi. Because he could say to the Balchov, look, I specifically left you Benonis fields to collect from Shimon. Givaldi. Amar Abai says, Ruvain shemachor sada l'Shimon b'achrayis. Ruvain sells a field to Shimon b'achrayis, with the warranty, right? Ruvain sells a field to Shimon and says, look, if a Balchov comes and collects the field from you, you come back to me and I'll give you your money back. V'asa Balchov d'Ruvain v'tarif mi-Shimon. And sure enough, Ruvain's Balchov knocks on Shimon's door and says, look, I'm taking the field, Ruvain didn't pay me back. Dina hu de'ozil Ruvain u'mishtoi dina b'hadei. Ruvain has every right to walk over to Shimon's house with the Balchov over there and start arguing with the Balchov. And he tells the Balchov, what are you talking about? You're nuts, I paid you back. And the Baal Chov cannot say to Ruvain, look, go away, stay out of this. Shimon owns the field now, I'm dealing with Shimon. Do Amarle, Ruvain has every right to say to the Baal Chov, Imafkas mine, yes, but if you take away, don't you realize that if you take away the field from Shimon, Olei Hodor, he's now going to come to me and say, I want my money back. So I am entitled to get involved here, and therefore Ruvain is allowed to get involved and argue back. Those who say nami, that even if Ruvain sold the field to Shimon without achrayis, without a warranty, still he'd be able to get involved here. The Amalei says lo nichali titiavi Shimon the Shimon tarumis alai. Still, Ruvain can come and start arguing with the Baal Chov and make claims that he paid back and stuff like that because even though Shimon does not have a warranty, right? He bought it without a warranty, without a guarantee. But still, Reuven's going to say, look, I know that I technically don't need to give him his money back, but I definitely don't want to have a situation where Shimon is upset with me that I sold him a field that was taken away from him. So therefore, Reuven can come and he can argue as well. But Abaye says, Reuven shemachar sadeh l'Shimon shelo b'achrayis, that if Reuven sells a field to Shimon without any guarantee, without any achrayis, okay, so Reuven sells a field to Shimon, no achrayis, and importantly, he also, Shimon has not yet paid for it. So he has not yet made a kinyan on the field. And then all of a sudden, people come to Shimon and say, what are you doing on that field? It's our field. So wow, that's already the Shabbos one. It's a good thing that we're mamish done over here. But it's a big daf. I don't know if we're quite at the hour mark, but we're definitely close. So if Shimon has not yet made a chazak on it, remember he didn't pay for it because karka is nicknamed bekesef, but he didn't yet pay for it, and he has not yet made a chazak on it, so therefore it doesn't yet belong to Shimon. So now Shimon, we're saying that there was no achrayis, but he never made a chazak on it yet. So yochol achzav, he can give it back to Reuven. But if he already made a chazaka, made a kinyan chazaka, ein yochol achzav, so he can't give it back to Reuven. My timer, how come? The Amarle chaysid dekatre savet v'kabalt. Reuven says to him, look, you bought you accepted a sack full of hot air, right? Meaning, you knew that you were taking the risk, right? You purchased this field without any guarantee, without achrayis. Like, you knew what you were getting yourself into. You knew that there was a chance that this could happen, and you accepted the risk. Accept the risk? At what point is it considered a chazaka that it belongs to Shimon? Once he puts up fences, right? He puts a fence around the field, he's taken ownership of it. When Shimon purchased it without achrayis, but if he had purchased it with achrayis, then this would not apply, meaning he would be able to give the field back to Reuven, right? Meaning, if Shimon purchased the field from Reuven and there was achrayis, Reuven says, if anything happens, you come back to me. And so even though he made a chazaka on it already, he would still be able to give it back because he hasn't yet paid him for it. And therefore, he says, look, I'm not, you sold to me with achrayis, which means you're going to have to give me my money back anyways. So it just, look, I'm not going to pay you, just take it back. V'ika, the amre, and those who say, afilu b'achrayis nami, no, even if it was b'achrayis, he can't give it back. He would have to continue and pay Reuven. He can't just go back on it. The amrei ach v'tirpcha v'ashalim loch, because Reuven can still say to him, look, I know that I sold to b'achrayis, but still you can't just give it back to me because if so, that look, I know these people are saying that it's theirs. Go to court, get documents, but I'm not just giving you your money, I did take it's like any warranty. You can never trust any warranty, right? All of a sudden you want to say, give me my money back, to say, no, you need this, you need that, I need this paper, I need that document. Reuven's pulling the same shtick, right? He's saying, look, yeah, sure, you'll get your money back, go to court, do the official process, do the paperwork, then I'll give you your money back, right? But you can't just go back like that, I'm not just giving you your money back, willy-nilly. That was Daf Chesed, Masechta BavaKama. So I'm called BavaKama. I won't call it BavaKivamis, but you understand what I was saying there with BavaKivamis. Remember, who's got which field, and Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda. Where do we even start? I don't even know where to start in talking about what we talked about today. We talked about Edis. Is it relative? Is it universal? And then we started getting into fields and who owns what field. And I don't know. Thankfully, I don't have a headache. My brain is doing just fine. It is after candlelighting over here Friday, so I'm going to run. Peace out.